It all started with a lamp. Not a metaphorical lamp, not some deep, symbolic, light of truth nonsense. No, a literal, overpriced, supposedly handcrafted Italian table lamp that Karen swore spoke to her the moment she saw it. Now, I don't know what it said exactly, maybe buy me and ruin your husband's evening, but I do know that when she came home cradling that thing like it was a newborn, I was the one who ended up footing the $800 bill for a lamp that looked suspiciously like the one I'd seen on clearance at Home Depot for $30. Joseph, she said, placing it on the side table next to the couch, look at it. Doesn't it just add so much character to the room? Yes, I nodded solemnly. This is exactly what was missing. Not new blinds, not that leak in the kitchen ceiling we keep ignoring, this lamp. Our lives are now complete. She ignored the sarcasm, too busy adjusting its position by a fraction of an inch over and over. Then she stepped back, admiring it like she had just sculpted it from marble with her own two hands. I had planned to spend the evening the way any respectable husband does, sitting on the couch, pretending to listen while she talked about some friend's cousin's divorce, and wondering how early I could suggest going to bed without it being suspicious. But before I could execute my flawless plan, she hit me with something unexpected. Oh, I forgot to tell you, my book club is coming over tomorrow night. Book club. 2 words that, when spoken by Karen, meant 3 things. 1. Nobody would read the book. 2. Our wine rack would be empty by the end of the night. And 3. I'd be banished from my own home until the cackling died down to a reasonable level. Great, I muttered. I'll make myself scarce. Karen gave me that practiced smile, the one that meant she was already moving on from the conversation and assuming I'd go along with it. And I did, because that's what marriage is, agreeing to things you don't want to do in exchange for the occasional moment of peace. So, the next evening, I grabbed my car keys and left the house right as the first of the book club members arrived, a woman who greeted Karen with an air kiss and a bottle of wine that probably cost less than the gas I was about to burn driving around aimlessly. Or at least, that was the plan. But life, in all its twisted humor, had other ideas. About an hour into my self-imposed exile, I realized I had left my wallet at home. I could have gone without it, but my phone was about to die, and the thought of sitting in a parking lot with no distractions was enough to make me turn the car around. I pulled into the driveway and noticed something strange. The house was dark. Now, that was weird. Karen's book club meetings usually looked and sounded like a reenactment of the Salem witch trials. But tonight, not a single light on. No laughter. No empty bottles clinking together in the kitchen sink. I frowned. Had they left already? I stepped inside quietly, half expecting to hear the muffled hum of their voices coming from the living room, but the place was dead silent. And then I saw it. The lamp. The $800 Italian masterpiece that spoke to Karen. It was on the floor. Not knocked over. Not broken. Just lying there, completely unplugged, as if someone had gently set it down in the middle of the room and walked away. I stared at it. You ever get that feeling when you just know something's off? Not because of anything obvious, but because the air feels different, like the universe is nudging you in the ribs, whispering, "Hey, moron, pay attention." That was me standing there, looking at that stupid lamp. Then I heard it. Voices. Not from the living room, not from the kitchen. From somewhere else. Somewhere upstairs. I walked toward the stairs, my footsteps unnaturally loud against the quiet of the house. Halfway up, I caught movement from the corner of my eye. A jacket. Not mine. Not Karen's. Draped over the back of the dining chair like it belonged there. Like whoever had worn it had taken it off with every intention of staying a while. I reached the top of the stairs, and now the voices were clearer. Karen's, unmistakable. And a man's. A voice I hadn't heard before. I stood there, listening. I could have barged in right then, demanded answers, made a big scene like the dramatic husband in every bad movie ever made. But I didn't. Because something else caught my eye. The bedroom door was slightly open, just enough for me to see inside without them seeing me. And there, on my nightstand, next to my alarm clock, was a glass of water. Now, you might be wondering why a glass of water mattered. Let me tell you, Karen never drank water before bed. Ever. She had this whole theory that drinking water at night would make her wake up looking puffy. I've spent years listening to her talk about it like it was the gospel truth. And yet, there it was. A glass of water, sitting exactly where I knew it shouldn't be. Something shifted in my chest. I could feel it, the pieces clicking together. The lamp, the jacket, the voices, the water. Karen was in there. With someone else. And they had made themselves comfortable. I let out a slow breath and took a step back. Not because I was afraid, not because I was in shock, but because in that moment, standing there in the dark hallway of my own home, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Calm. Because now, I had the truth. And Karen? She had no idea what was coming next. I could have walked in right then. Could have pushed the door open, stood there like some sitcom husband catching his wife in the act, arms crossed, waiting for the stammering explanations to start. But where's the fun in that? If my wife was going to make a fool out of me, the least I could do was enjoy the show. So, instead, I stepped back, leaned against the wall, and listened. At first, I couldn't make out much, just the general rhythm of conversation. Karen's voice was softer than usual, that fake sweet tone she used when she wanted something. The guy's voice? Relaxed. Comfortable. Not the kind of voice you'd have if you were sneaking around in another man's house, which told me two things. He was way too confident. He was a moron. Then came the laughter. Karen's. Followed by his. It wasn't just laughter, it was that specific kind of giggling Karen did when she was trying too hard. The one where she sounded like she was auditioning for a role as woman flirting in a cheap commercial. And that's when I heard it. Not an admission. Not a confession. Just a sentence. One single sentence that changed everything. You're so much more fun than Joseph. Now, let's pause here for a second. Because I need you to understand something. If she had said something basic like, "Oh, Joseph and I have been distant lately," or "Things aren't the same anymore," maybe I would have felt a little sad. Maybe even hurt. But this was a whole new level of insult. Not just cheating. No, that would have been too easy. She was comparing me. Grading me like I was some failed experiment she was replacing with the newer, shinier model. Fun? Oh, fun? I was fun. I was the guy who sat through 2-hour-long historical romance movies where nobody actually does anything but stare at each other dramatically. I was the guy who held her purse in department stores while she circled the same clothing rack for 20 minutes. I was the guy who attended her friends' baby showers and pretended to care about diaper brands. But no, apparently, none of that counted. Because Karen had found herself a newer, shinier, more fun model. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind of smile you have when you realize you've been a fool for way too long, and now, finally, you get to do something about it. I straightened up, turned, and walked back downstairs. A plan was forming. Not revenge. No, revenge is too emotional, too messy. This wasn't about anger. This was about setting the stage. I grabbed my keys and walked out the front door. Now, here's the thing. Most men in my situation would do something dramatic. Maybe storm in, throw things, yell, demand answers. But not me. No, no, no. See, when someone disrespects you to your face and doesn't even have the decency to be discreet about it, the best thing you can do isn't yell. It's let them think they've won. So, I left. Not forever. Just long enough. I took a drive, not aimlessly, mind you, because unlike Karen, I planned my decisions. I made a couple of stops, handled a few things, and made sure I had everything lined up exactly the way I wanted it. When I returned home, the house was exactly as I had left it, dark, quiet, like nothing had happened. Except for one thing. The lamp. Oh yes, the beloved, overpriced, sacred artifact of home decor. It was back in its place, standing proudly on the table like it had never been moved. I walked over to it, looking it up and down like I was examining a crime scene. And that's when I noticed something interesting. The cord. It was tucked behind the table, not plugged in. Now, why would someone take the time to pick up the lamp, put it back, but not plug it in? Because they were in a hurry. Because something or someone had made them panic. I turned my head towards the stairs, smirking. Karen wasn't as smooth as she thought. I walked into the kitchen, took my time making a cup of coffee, and sat down at the table, waiting. And sure enough, about 20 minutes later, I heard the creak of footsteps coming down the stairs. Showtime. Karen appeared in the doorway, hair slightly messy, wearing an old hoodie she only pulled out when she was feeling guilty. "Oh, you're home," she said, forcing a smile. "How was your night?" I took a sip of my coffee. "Oh, just out. Having fun." She flinched. It was subtle, but I caught it. That's when I knew. She wasn't sure. She didn't know if I knew. And that was going to be fun. I stretched, leaned back in my chair, and smiled at her. "So, how was book club?" And just like that, she was on the defensive. "Oh, it was good." She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. The usual. Lots of wine, lots of gossip. Uh-huh. I nodded slowly. What book did you guys read? Silence. Then a nervous laugh. Oh, I actually didn't get around to reading this one. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't get around to it? But you were so excited about it. Karen's smile was tight. Forced. Yeah, I mean, I got busy. I took another sip of coffee, letting the silence stretch between us. She swallowed. Well, going to head up to bed. You coming? Not yet, I said, giving her an easy smile. I think I'll stay up a little while longer. She nodded quickly, then turned and walked away, a little too fast, like she couldn't get out of the room quickly enough. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close. Then I got up, walked over to the lamp, and unplugged it again. Because if Karen wanted to play games, I was more than happy to make sure she lost. And this was just the beginning. The thing about knowing something you're not supposed to know is that it gives you power. And if there's one thing I've learned in my years of being a husband, it's that Karen hates when I have power over any situation. Which is exactly why I spent the next few days pretending like absolutely nothing had changed. Karen, on the other hand, was acting like a teenager who got away with sneaking out past curfew but wasn't entirely sure if her parents had noticed. She was overcompensating, asking me about my day with exaggerated enthusiasm, laughing too hard at my jokes, and, most importantly, being way too nice. Too nice is a problem. Too nice means guilt. Too nice means she's still worried I might suspect something. So, naturally, I leaned into it. Wow, Karen, you're in such a great mood, I said one morning as she practically skipped around the kitchen. Something good happened? She froze for half a second before forcing a smile. No, just, trying to appreciate life more. I nodded. That's great. You should always appreciate what you have. You never know when something might change. And there it was. The slight shift in her expression, the tightening around her eyes, the fake smile that almost faltered. But she recovered quickly, because Karen was many things, and unfortunately for me, quick on her feet was one of them. Still, she didn't like uncertainty. So, I made sure she had plenty of it. I started asking small, seemingly innocent questions. Oh, I meant to ask, how's Lisa doing? Lisa, who was supposedly in her book club. Oh, she's great, Karen said too quickly. Yeah? What did she think of the book? Another hesitation. Well, she didn't read it either. Oh. I mused, sipping my coffee. Weird. I ran into her at the store yesterday, and she said you guys barely talked at book club. Karen blinked. Oh. Well, you know how it is, lots of conversations happening at once. Of course. I nodded. And, just to be clear, what was the book, again? And that was the moment she realized she had made a mistake. Because now she had to commit to a lie she wasn't prepared for. Oh, something about history? I raised an eyebrow. History. Yeah, like the past? Incredible. I nodded. Truly a groundbreaking concept. She laughed nervously and quickly changed the subject. I let her, because I wasn't in a rush. See, people like Karen thrive on control. They need to feel like they're the ones calling the shots, the ones keeping everything together. So, the worst thing you can do to them isn't yelling or accusing them outright. It's letting them believe they're one step ahead, right up until the moment they realize they were never even in the race to begin with. So, I did what any man in my situation would do. I started messing with her. Nothing obvious. Nothing that would make her come out and admit anything. Just enough to make her question everything. For example, I started setting my phone face down on the table whenever we were together. I don't normally do that, but I wanted her to wonder if I was hiding something. If I got a text, I'd glance at it and smirk before putting the phone back in my pocket without saying a word. At one point, I casually mentioned, man, the guys at work have been telling me some wild stories lately. Karen, who was folding laundry, didn't even look up. Oh? Like what? Oh, just crazy stuff. You'd be surprised what people get up to. She finally looked at me. Like what kind of crazy stuff? I shrugged. Affairs, mostly. The sock she was holding slipped from her hand. I pretended not to notice. People cheating on their spouses, she asked, her voice too even. Yep. The worst part? They always think they're being so sneaky, but you know how it is, someone always finds out eventually. Karen's face was stiff, her hands folding a shirt with unnecessary precision. Really? Oh yeah, I said, stretching. Crazy world we live in. Then I got up and walked out of the room. The next day, she started checking my phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I could see her out of the corner of my eye, glancing at it when I left it on the counter, trying to act casual as she scrolled through my notifications. And so, just for fun, I decided to add a little fuel to the fire. I sent a text to myself from my work email with the subject line, "Everything is set. Let's talk soon." Then I left my phone unlocked on the couch and went to take a shower. By the time I came back, Karen was sitting there, scrolling through her own phone, looking deeply invested in whatever she was reading. Too invested. I sat down beside her, grabbed my phone, and casually glanced at the screen. Then, just to make sure she saw it, I smirked. She looked up. "What's so funny?" I shrugged. "Nothing. Just got a very interesting email." And then I got up and left the room again. For the rest of the night, she kept glancing at me like she was trying to solve a puzzle she didn't even know she was a part of. See, Karen thought she was playing chess. She had no idea she was already checkmated. But the real fun was just beginning. Because if she wanted to lie to me, that was fine. I was just going to make sure she never knew which one of us was truly keeping secrets. And trust me, Karen hates not knowing things. Which is why I plan to keep this going for as long as I want it. Because, unlike her, I actually enjoy having fun. The thing about people like Karen is that they don't really think they're going to get caught. They think they're the main character, that they're just naturally smarter, sneakier, better at covering their tracks. And maybe that's true when the person they're playing against doesn't know the game has started. But I knew. And because I knew, I got to sit back and watch as Karen slowly unraveled under the pressure of not knowing what I knew. I gave her space to panic. Just little things. Leaving the room when my phone buzzed. Smirking at my screen when she was looking. Casually mentioning random male coworkers by name, just vague enough for her to wonder if one of them had seen something and told me. She was cracking. I could see it. The longer I acted normal, the more she overcompensated, trying to figure out if I was acting normal because I was normal or because I was planning something. She started checking in with me more. "What are your plans today?" "Oh, nothing special." And then she'd watch me like she was waiting for me to slip up. I didn't, but she did. It was Wednesday afternoon when the final piece of the puzzle practically fell into my lap. I was supposed to be at work, but I had conveniently forgotten my laptop at home. I knew Karen had the day off, and I wanted to see if she'd react when I unexpectedly walked through the door. She did. She was standing in the living room, her phone in her hand, frozen like a deer in headlights. I barely glanced at her before heading to my office, but I caught it, the screen, just before she tilted it away. A text conversation. The name at the top? Mike. I didn't know a Mike, but Karen apparently did. I shut the door to my office, sat down at my desk, and took a deep breath. All right, that was enough playing. Time for the fun part. I had already done a little research beforehand, just in case I got a lead like this. It took me all of 10 minutes to find out who Mike was. Mike Harrington, age 38, divorced, gym owner. Oh, this was too easy. I spent the rest of the day preparing. If Karen wanted to act like she was in a game of espionage, I was going to show her what real strategy looked like. First step? I made a fake email account. Then I did something that I knew would make her panic. I sent her an anonymous message. "You should be more careful. People are watching." No name. No explanation. Just those words. I didn't hear anything at first, but then, about an hour later, I heard Karen pacing outside my office. She was on the phone. "No, I don't know. It's just some weird message." "No, of course not. But what if?" "No, I don't think it's him, but She walked out of earshot. I grinned. Karen had just confirmed it for me. So Mike was the guy. Fantastic. Now, it was time to introduce myself. I found Mike's business number easily. It was plastered all over the gym's website. I called, disguising my number. "Hey, this is Mike." "Hey, Mike," I said casually. "Quick question. How's Karen doing?" There was a pause. "Who is this?" "Someone who knows Karen pretty well," I said. "And someone who just wanted to call and say congrats." "I mean, stealing another man's wife? Bold move, buddy. Very alpha male of you." Mike didn't hang up, which told me everything. If he had no idea what I was talking about, he would have said so. But he didn't. Instead, he tried to control the damage. "Listen, I don't know what you think is going on, but..." "Oh, I don't think, Mike," I interrupted. "I know. And I have to say, I expected better from a man who preaches discipline and honor on his gym's Instagram page." Silence. I smirked. "Anyway," I said cheerfully, "I just wanted to give you a heads up. See, Karen's been acting a little off lately. Super paranoid. So if I were you, I'd be extra careful. You never know who might be watching." And then I hung up. Let him sit with that for a while. I wasn't done yet. See, revenge is only fun if you do it right. And I wasn't going to do something cliché like expose them in some dramatic confrontation. No, no, no. I wanted Karen to suffer in the way that really mattered to her, socially. Karen was obsessed with her image. The perfect wife. The perfect life. The perfect reputation. So I decided to tweak that image just a little. I went on Facebook and made a very simple post. Marriage is a funny thing. You think you know someone, but then you find out they've been keeping secrets. But hey, what's life without a few surprises? No details. No names. Just enough to make people wonder. And wonder they did. The comments started rolling in. Everything okay, Joseph? Secrets? That sounds serious. Wait, what happened? And then, finally, the one I was waiting for. Karen's comment. Joseph, what are you talking about? I didn't reply. I just let her sit there, publicly exposed, publicly confused, while everyone speculated. An hour later, she stormed into the office. What the hell is that post about? She demanded. I looked up from my computer, completely calm. What post? You know what post. I shrugged. Oh, that? Just some thoughts about marriage. She clenched her jaw. You made it sound like something's wrong. I smiled. Is there? She stared at me, and for the first time in years, I saw it. Fear. She knew. She knew I knew. But she didn't know how much I knew. And that? That was going to make this so much fun. I leaned back in my chair. Anyway, Karen, I wouldn't worry too much. I'm sure everything will come out in the open soon enough. And then I turned back to my computer, dismissing her entirely. She didn't move. She just stood there, stewing in her own paranoia. Which was exactly what I wanted. Because the best part about revenge? Letting them destroy themselves. And Karen? She was already falling apart. Karen had two default settings when she was losing control of a situation. The first was anger. The kind that involved sharp words, exaggerated hand gestures, and accusations that made no sense. The problem was, anger only worked if the other person reacted, and I wasn't giving her that. Which led her straight into the second setting, victim mode. And that? That was the real show. I'd barely finished my morning coffee when she made her entrance, dramatic. I slightly red, probably from practicing fake crying in the mirror, and wrapped in the same blanket she only pulled out when she wanted sympathy. I took a sip of my coffee. Karen. She sniffed. Joseph, we need to talk. Of course we did. She sat down across from me, gripping the blanket like she was preparing to deliver the saddest monologue of her life. I feel like something's wrong between us, she said, her voice shaking just enough to sound rehearsed but not quite convincing. I don't know what's happening, but it feels like you're distant. I nodded. Interesting theory. She blinked, clearly expecting more. When I didn't say anything, she powered through. Is it work? Are you stressed? Because if there's something bothering you, you can talk to me. I'm your wife, Joseph. I tilted my head. Is that what you are? Her whole body stiffened. It was subtle, but I caught it. That tiny, momentary flash of panic in her eyes before she forced a smile. Of course I am, she said quickly. We're a team, aren't we? Oh, she was really laying it on thick. I leaned forward, resting my arms on the table. All right, Karen. Let's talk. You want to tell me what's really on your mind? She looked down, twisting the blanket in her hands. I just feel like we've been off lately. Like you're looking at me differently. And then that post. There it was. The real issue. I took another sip of coffee. What about it? She hesitated. It made it sound like something was going on. I stared at her. And her breath hitched. And I don't know. It made me feel like you're doubting me. I set my mug down and nodded. Now, why would I do that? She flinched, just barely. Then she sniffed again, switching gears. Joseph, I just don't want to lose you. Oh, now she didn't want to lose me? Fascinating. I gave her the same neutral look I'd been perfecting all week. You don't say. She swallowed hard. I love you. You know that, right? I sat back. Love's a funny thing, Karen. You ever notice how some people love differently when they think no one's watching? The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might actually pass out. She forced a laugh. What does that mean? I didn't answer. I just let her sit with it. See, Karen wanted a reaction from me. She wanted me to be emotional, to yell, to demand answers. Because that would give her an opportunity to flip the script, to cry about how I was pushing her away, how we could fix this if I just opened up. But I wasn't playing that game. So I let the silence stretch. Karen shifted uncomfortably. Joseph, please. I feel like you're slipping away from me. I nodded. Could be. She let out a shaky breath. Maybe I haven't been perfect lately. I've been distracted. I've been dealing with some personal things. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. Sure. Her jaw clenched. Joseph, can you stop acting like I'm the bad guy here? I raised an eyebrow. Who said anything about you being the bad guy? She froze. I tilted my head, watching the wheels spin in her head. She was waiting for me to say something specific, something that she could react to. But I just stared at her. And Karen? She hated that. Her lip trembled. I don't understand why you're acting like this. It's like you're trying to punish me for something. I shrugged. Why would I do that? Tears, real ones this time, started welling up in her eyes. But I'd known Karen long enough to recognize the difference between heartbreak and frustration. She wasn't sad. She was angry. Because she knew. She knew I knew. And the worst part? She didn't know how much. Karen took a deep breath, composing herself. Joseph, she whispered, reaching across the table. Whatever this is, we can fix it. We've always been able to fix things. We just need to be honest with each other. I looked at her hand resting on mine, and then I pulled away. Karen's face crumbled. Please, she whispered. For a split second, I almost felt bad. But then I remembered Mike. And just like that, the pity evaporated. I stood up. You're right, Karen. We should be honest with each other. She nodded quickly, eyes wide with hope. Yes. Yes, exactly. Let's just. But you first, I said. Tell me something honest. Her mouth opened, then closed. I waited. She let out a slow breath. I don't know what you want me to say. I nodded. That's what I thought. Then I turned and walked out of the room. Karen didn't follow me. And that told me everything I needed to know. Because if she had nothing to hide, she would have fought harder. She would have demanded that I listen, that I believe her. But she didn't. Because she knew. And now? It was time to end this on my terms. Karen was an expert at one thing, making herself the center of every situation. And for years, I let her do it. Not because I was weak, but because sometimes it's just easier to go along with things than deal with the drama. But this was different. Because now, I wasn't just in the situation. I was controlling it. The shift happened fast. Karen went from sad to nervous to desperate in a matter of days. The fake crying stopped working, the soft apologies stopped working, and, most satisfying of all, the attempts to guilt me stopped working. And that's when she lost it. You hate me, don't you? She blurted out one evening, standing in the middle of the living room like she was about to make some grand confession. I looked up from my phone, completely calm. Hate's a strong word, Karen. Her hands curled into fists. Then what is this? This game you're playing? I raised an eyebrow. Game. You know something. I don't know how much, but you know something, and you're just sitting there, watching me, waiting for me to slip up. I nodded. That's a pretty good summary, yeah. Karen's mouth opened, then shut. I watched as she scrambled for a strategy, some way to spin this into something she could control. Then she tried something really bold. I made a mistake, she whispered. Now, most men in my position might have jumped on that. Might have demanded, what mistake? Might have forced her to admit everything right then and there. But I wasn't most men. So instead, I leaned back in my chair and shrugged. Okay. Karen blinked. That's it. Well, it's not my mistake, I said. So, yeah, that's it. Her face turned red. Joseph, I'm trying here. I tilted my head. Are you? Yes, I am. You think this is easy for me? I smirked. Oh, I'm sure sneaking around behind my back was just exhausting for you. Boom. There it was. The look of pure, unfiltered panic. I let the silence stretch, just long enough for her to feel it. Then I stood up, walked to the coat rack, and grabbed my keys. Karen's eyes widened. Where are you going? I turned back to her, smiled, and said, Don't worry, Karen. I'm not leaving you. Then I left. Because I wanted her to sit with that. I wanted her to know that she wasn't the one in control anymore. The next morning, I made my final move. See, Karen had spent years curating an image. The perfect wife. The perfect marriage. The perfect life. So I took it away from her. I started small, messaging a few mutual friends, letting them know I was going through some things and asking if they'd noticed anything odd about Karen lately. That's the trick. You don't accuse. You suggest. And people? People love filling in the blanks. Then I went for the bigger move. Karen had a weekly get-together with a few of her friends, some book club, some not. It was her girls' night, the one she always made a big deal about. So I made sure I showed up to drop something off for her in the middle of it. I knocked. The door opened, and there she was, surrounded by people who still thought she was the devoted, innocent wife. Perfect. Joseph, she said, her voice tight. Hey, babe, I said, keeping my tone light. Just figured I'd bring you that thing you left at home. I handed her an empty envelope. She stared at it. What? Oh, don't worry. It's nothing important, I said. It's just empty. Kinda like all the promises in this marriage. The silence that followed? Absolutely beautiful. And then? I turned and walked away. Karen didn't chase after me. Because she couldn't. She had an audience now. An audience that was staring at her, whispering. What was that about? What's going on? By the time I got home, my phone was blowing up. Messages. Calls. All from people who had suddenly started realizing things about Karen. Because once the doubt is planted, it grows. I didn't even have to expose her. She did that all on her own. And the best part? I never gave her the satisfaction of a dramatic ending. No yelling. No accusations. No begging her for the truth. I just left. Karen moved out 2 weeks later. She tried to make it look like it was her choice, but by then, the damage was done. The friends she had spent years keeping close were suddenly busy. The people she loved impressing weren't answering her calls. She tried, one last time, to get me to talk. I don't know where we went wrong, she said. I nodded. Yeah, you wouldn't. And then I walked away. Because, really? What else was there to say? Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel